Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's me, Mrs. Gordon. I'm here to talk to you about today's lesson. It's called Specialized Cells and Tissues, and it's all about how organisms are organized all the way from the smallest units of cells up to organisms. For this lesson, you're going to need a couple of additional resources outside your Chromebook. You're going to need some notebook paper. I just have a spiral bound notebook here that I'm working with a blank piece of paper. And you're going to need a pencil or a pen. I'm going to be using a pen for today, just like the way it feels in my hand, but you can use a pencil as well. Another resource that might be helpful is a highlighter to use as you go. Now, for today's work, you're going to be reading through the following slides. I'll go over those slides verbally with you now. You are going to follow instructions when you are directed to make pictures or to record a definition in your notes. And so I will try to be deliberate about pausing and giving you adequate time to sketch and draw what you need. Then when you're done, you're going to take the notes that you have completed, should be a page, a full page, maybe you have 2 pages, and you're going to take a picture of those notes and upload them as evidence of your participation in Google Classroom. There should be a post in Google Classroom called Specialized Cells and Tissues. You will upload your picture of your notes there. So let's get started. This is an introduction to your body organization, and this flowchart shows us how our body is organized from cell all the way to whole organism. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom present slides so that we can see these more clearly. Get myself up there. So organisms are built from cells. Everything in our body is made of cells. Now, what we're going to learn in this unit is those cells have very different shapes and functions. And so we're going to be looking at cells of the intestine, cells of the brain, cells of the heart, and be comparing them and looking at them. So cells build into tissues. So cells that are organized, that have similar functions and structures, those are tissues. Tissues make up our organs. And so, for example, the lungs have very specific types of tissue, lung tissue, which may have several types of cells organized in different areas of the lung. Your heart is made of cardiac muscle, which is a specific kind of tissue. And then your organs are organized into organ systems. That's what we talked about: the cardiovascular system, the urinary system, the digestive system, endocrine system, skeletal muscular system. There's the lymphatic system. There's the integumentary system, which is your skin. And I'm probably forgetting them, but we went over those in the last couple of days. And then organ systems work together to maintain an organism. Here's a pyramid that kind of shows how that organization works, with the very base level of life being built by cells. Cells build tissues, tissues build organs, organs build organ systems, and organ systems make up the organism. This pyramid is called the hierarchy of life. Now, if you were to pause right now in your notes, okay, now would be a great idea to take your pen or pencil and copy down this pyramid. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. At this time, you are welcome to pause the video to create your pyramid. Okay, let's continue. You've got your pyramid written down in your notes. Let's go on to the next. So to start off with, your body is made of organs. This is what your brain looks like. So this would be nervous system tissue made of nervous cells or neurons. This is your heart. Obviously looks very different from the brain. Both are made of cells. The difference is that the brain is made of specialized cells that make up nervous system tissue, whereas the heart is made of specialized cells that makes up cardiac tissue. And so even though they are both made of cells, they look very different and they have very different functions. Here's the lungs. Here's bone. Okay, so this is the question we're looking at as we investigate specialized cells. These organs look very, very different. So are they made of the same stuff? So even though they have different looks, different functions, different sizes, different shapes, are they made of the same stuff? And so that's what we're looking at with specialized cells. So, number one, we're going to look at a cell called a neuron, and neurons are found in the brain. Now, over to the right, you'll notice a picture that shows brain cells. It kind of looks like a spider web with these long kind of legs poking out. Those are called dendrites. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take your piece of paper. Okay, so I'm looking at my notebook again, and you're going to sketch a neuron. So look at the right-hand side, you're sketching a neuron. I'm going to do that now so you can kind of see what we're doing. So I've got a nucleus here, and then I've got these long legs coming out, and there's a couple of them. It kind of looks like a spider web. Okay, so this is kind of an example of what I've drawn here. Now I'm going to label it neuron. So this might be an example of what you've got in your notes. Just really simple, just keeping it up there at the top of your page. Now, you also want on your notes to include the specialized function. And if you want to now, you can also use these pictures on this slide to help you draw a neuron. I really love this picture down here in the bottom right-hand corner. It's got the nice body of the neuron here with these legs sticking out. Those are called dendrites. This is called the axon here. This is called the axon. That's where the messages of the nervous system are sent. But here we go. We want to make sure to also include the specialized function. And so I'm taking my notebook here. I'm writing specialized function. Okay. And then I'm going to write down what the specialized function of the nervous system is, or the nervous cell. It's to send electrical signals from cell to cell throughout the body. So I'm going to write that down. You go ahead and write that down as well. We'll go ahead and pause if you need to do that. Once again, press pause, write down the specialized function of your cell on your notes. You're welcome to unpause whenever you're ready. Let's go to the next. The second picture you're going to be drawing in your notes is about smooth muscle cells, and that is found in different places of the body. So there are lots of places where we find smooth muscle. They line the inside of organs. So what you want to do right now is go ahead and look at the picture of muscle cells. And here's some more here on the next slide. Look at the pictures of the muscle cells. Draw a picture. Those dark circles within the red there, those dark circles represent the nuclei. And muscle cells are kind of long and stringy. They're made of fibers called actin and myosin. And those fibers can be several feet long. So one single cell can be several feet long with multiple nuclei in them. So once again, I'm not going to write down this. You guys are doing that on your own. You're drawing a picture of a muscle cell. And then to follow that, what is the specialized function? So proteins, the proteins of the muscle cell, the proteins that are produced by muscle, allow cells to contract and relax, producing motion. So essentially, muscle cells, which are very, very long, produce these proteins called actin and myosin, and those proteins arrange themselves in a way that when muscle cells are stimulated by the nervous system, they can contract or become shorter. Okay, so if you're flexing or you're doing weights, your muscles are getting shorter to pull your bone up. And then muscle cells can then, once they're no longer stimulated by the nervous system, relax and extend. So again, you're writing your specialized function on your paper. Next piece of notes for your notebook are the lung cells, and your lung cells are made of what's called epithelial cells. And if you look at the picture here, epithelial cells, look how diffuse they are. Look how spread out those cells are. So on your piece of paper, go ahead and draw epithelial cells. You may recognize that the dark purple spots within the cells, those are the nuclei. You may consider labeling those. Pause me at any time. And the specialized function of those cells is gas exchange. So I'm going to move this down. A single layer of thin cells at the end, the terminal site of lungs, allows for exchange of gases between the lungs and the blood. So this picture here, this round part here is showing what's called an alveoli. Essentially, this is what the terminal end of lung tissue looks like. So if the lungs are up here, air travels through the lungs, and this is the very last site that air hits in the lungs as it reaches the bloodstream. So here's the bloodstream here. This is the part of the lung called the alveoli. This is where gas from your breathing, the oxygen gets into your bloodstream, and this is where carbon dioxide gets out of your bloodstream. So this epithelial tissue, if you can see it here, it's a single layer. It's a single layer of cells, very, very thin. And the reason it is thin is so that a gas can get through it very easily. It gets through the spaces between cells. So on your notes, make sure to write down the specialized function. Pause me at any time. I'm going to move on. The last one we're looking at are called osteocytes. Osteocytes are the cells that make up blood. Now, unlike when we looked at epithelial tissue, look how tightly compacted those bone cells are. So, which makes sense because bone is very dense compared to lungs. So on a sheet of paper, go ahead and sketch bone cells. You'll notice those dark spots kind of throughout. It almost looks like a tree. You guys know when you chop down, well, I don't chop down trees, but I've seen tree cores. It kind of reminds me of that, with the kind of core of the tree here with these rings extending outward. That's exactly what bone cells look like as well. So each of these dark spots represents the nucleus of a cell. Go ahead and draw that now. And again, pause me, but I'm going to move on. The specialized function of cells of osteocytes is that it is a specialized type of cell that produces connective tissue that becomes mineralized. And what mineralization does is it hardens connective tissue. So this tissue is really important because it makes bones strong. So these kind of specialized cells are very, very different from from lung cells or heart cells or epithelial cells, because their special function is to create connective tissue, a specialized form of connective tissue that can become mineralized. That makes the bone very, very strong. So again, in your notes, make sure to write next to bone your specialized function. Now, before you go on to the next, Before you go on to the next bit of these notes, make sure that you have 4 drawings at this time in your notes. You have brain cells. You should have muscle cells, You should have lung cells, and you should have bone cells. Each drawing should be titled with the name of the cell, and you should have written the specialized function next to it. Make sure to check your notes before you move on. Now, in your body, there are over 200 different types of cells. There's some common cells listed right here, maybe ones that you've heard about: leukocytes, which are white blood cells, hematids, which are white blood cells, thrombocytes, which are platelets in your blood, ovum and sperm, which are the sex cells, ovum for female, sperm for male. Sarcomeres are a type of cell in muscle. Enterocytes live in the intestine, neurons for the nervous system, osteocytes for bone, and hepatocytes for liver. Each of these cells is given a name, and it's based on Latin. And you may notice that the word cyte, C-Y-T-E, shows up a lot at the end of these cell names, and that's because cyte in Latin means cell. Generally, when you have a word out in front of cyte, it is whatever the Latin word is for that organ. So for example, leuco, I believe leuco means white. And then down here, hepato means liver. Now, the last part is just talking about how these cells are organized into tissues. So just remember that tissues are the next step up on our pyramid. You have that written in your notes. A tissue is a group of connected cells that have a similar function. So connective tissue, like blood, is all made of similar types of cells. Epithelial tissue is made of epithelial cells. Muscle tissue is made of muscle cells, and nervous tissue is made of nervous cells. It's pretty straightforward. Next, we're going to look at the 4 types of tissues. Now, you can look at the 4 types of tissues and take notes on these as we go as well. So nervous system tissue. Tissue is made up of neurons or nerve cells that carry messages. Nerve tissue makes up your brain and the nerves that connect the brain to all parts of the body. And you can see this is another picture of nervous system tissue made of many neurons. Here's another picture of a neuron. This is kind of a schematic. This is obviously not a photo. So neurons are super interesting. One of my favorite cells to look at with this big body here where messages are sort of collected from other neurons. These dendrites here, these long extensions coming off of the body help to collect messages to bring them in. Then those messages are collected here in the body and sent down the axon. So messages travel down the axon. The way that these messages are transmitted is super fascinating. It has to do with chemical balance both in and out of the cell, and basically those chemicals triggering the next part of the cell as it travels down. It's super interesting. Highly recommend looking into it. And then the axon ends with axon terminals. These little extensions coming out then interact with other neurons. Muscle tissue is next. Muscle tissue is made of cells that have a unique ability to contract or become shorter. So the specialized function of muscle tissue is to contract or become shorter. Muscles are attached to bones. They allow the body to move. And there are 3 types of muscle. Skeletal muscle, which is the muscle that we use to move our bones. Smooth muscle, which lines all of our organs to help things pass through our organs. And then cardiac muscle, which is only located in the heart. Epithelial tissue is made up of cells that line the inner and outer body surfaces, like the skin and the lining of the digestive tract. Epithelial is really important for protecting the internal organs, secreting hormones in the endocrine system, and absorption. So epithelial tissue lines your small intestine as well as large intestine. Your small intestine is the site of nutrient absorption from your food. The large intestine is the site of water reabsorption back into the bloodstream. So epithelial tissue, again, is really, really thin tissue. It's great for absorption, and it's great for secretion of stuff that needs to leave an organ and enter the bloodstream. Remember, as you guys are listening and as you're looking, you're also writing down these notes in your note page about epithelial tissue and about the other tissues as well. If you need to pause me at any time to write down the notes, you can do that. Finally, connective tissue. There are so many types of connective tissue, and they all have unique functions and unique structures. So connective tissue is made up of cells that form the body's, basically the structure of the body. And so that can be anything from bone to blood, to fibers that hold your muscles to bone. Connective tissue is the most abundant tissue in your body. It is essential for support and protection of your organs. Some examples of connective tissue are fat tissue, which is essential for insulation and long-term energy storage, fibrous tissue, cartilage, bone, blood, lymph, which helps us with our immune system. All of these are considered connective tissue. Make sure you write this down in your notes. You don't have to write every word about connective tissue. Maybe you're just writing down connective tissue is abundant. Connective tissue could be fat, fibrous, cartilage, or bone. Again, you don't have to write every word. Now, when you're finished with this slideshow, maybe you watched it with me, or maybe you skipped me to just come to the end and see what you're supposed to do. When you finish taking notes on the 4 types of tissues, you're now going to take a picture of your completed work. Okay, so you're going to take a picture of your notes. You can do that with your Chromebook, or if you have a phone that works, you can do that too. And you're going to upload that picture to Google Classroom. This serves as evidence of your participation in today's activity.